Now I give the floor to the representative of the mission of the Observer State of Palestine.
Mr. President, thank you. Allow me at the outset to express our appreciation to the Polish presidency for organizing this important debate on a critical matter at a critical time. Allow me also to thank the briefers for their important contribution. Mr. President, international law is the law that governs our international relations. Its rules have been elaborated collectively and are binding for all. The major developments of international law occurred as a reaction to horrific tragedies in an attempt to prevent their recurrence and to preserve future generations. After the horrors of the Second World War, including the Holocaust, humanity established the UN and adopted its charter, adopted the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, elaborated the Geneva Conventions, and formed its first and yet imperfect international criminal courts. At the time while humanity was enacting these set of rules to preserve lives and rights, the Palestinian people endured in 1948 the Nakba, the dispossession and forcible displacement of our nation, and the denial of our rights that continue to this day. Despite being the victims of double standards that have allowed the Israeli impunity to continue, enabling the recurrence of widespread and systematic crimes against our people, the Palestinian people have continued placing their faith in international law and have reaffirmed time and time again their commitment to international law and to peaceful legal and diplomatic means to achieve their inalienable rights. The State of Palestine joined international human rights law instruments without reservations. It joined the Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols. It declared its commitment to abide by the International Courts of Justice decisions and opinions. It joined the ICC and granted broad jurisdiction to the court. Mr. President, intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population, the transfer by the occupying power of parts of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies, the deportation or transfer of the population of the occupied territory within or outside this territory, persecution against any identifiable group or collectivity, including a national group, all constitute war crimes under the Rome Statute and in certain circumstances, crimes against humanity. There can be no doubt that Israel is committing such actions in broad daylight, with intent, and without shame or fear of being held accountable. I say no shame, as Israel is trying now to make us responsible for its occupation of our land and the oppression of our people, and claims a right to security for the occupying power while denying a right to security and protection to the occupied people. International law is the law for all of us. It must be applicable to all. All Security Council resolutions are binding and should be upheld. Impunity and double standards undermine international law and as such threaten international peace and security. Individual states and UN bodies must fulfill their responsibilities by respecting and ensuring respect for international law. When it comes to Gaza, we are only requesting the implementation of the law. Let us just restate the facts. Israeli snipers, in implementation of the orders they received from the highest levels in the political and military bodies of Israel, have opened fire on people protesting from the other side of the border, including children, with live ammunition, including ammunition that causes serious and irreversible injury, often shooting them in the back or to the head or the chest, while they were hundreds of meters away, killing 100 and wounding thousands. Israel does not challenge these facts, and if it does, we called for an impartial, independent, and transparent investigation. If they are so confident of their right, let them accept it. Are there laws we are unaware of that justify such actions? It is not enough for Israel to yell security or terrorism for international law to yield or surrender. Those who shield Israel from being held accountable for such actions, and those who blur the lines between legal actions that can be undertaken by states to ensure security and self-defense and what constitutes war crimes and crimes against humanity, embolden Israel in pursuing its crimes. There can be no justification for colonization, for forcible displacement, for the use of unlawful force, no justification for arbitrary detention. And yet there are today 650,000 Israeli settlers in the occupied Palestinian territory in 1967. Innocent civilians are targeted and killed in indiscriminate attacks. Over 800,000 Palestinians, that's the equivalent of 40% of our male population in the occupied territory, were imprisoned or detained since 1967, including parliamentarians, children, women, journalists, academics, artists. Israeli courts were evoked so proudly by the Israeli representative today, while these courts are complicit in the commission of these crimes. B'Tselem explaining its decision not to cooperate any longer with the military law enforcement system, including Israeli military courts, stated, "There is no longer any point in pursuing justice and defending human rights by working with a system whose real function is measured by its ability to continue to successfully cover up unlawful acts and protect perpetrators." How can we explain this reality? By knowing the number of Israeli leaders and senior military officials who were held accountable for these actions. None. In 70 years. None. No sanctions were even discussed here in any point in time when it comes to Israel. No measures of accountability were ever undertaken. We are the victims of Israeli colonialism and oppression, but we are also the victims of impunity. Without it, these crimes would have ended a long while ago, and we would have achieved our freedom and fulfilled our inalienable rights, and peace would have prevailed in our region. Accountability is the path to peace. There is indeed a bias when it comes to Israel in the UN and beyond. It is the one shielding it from accountability. Despite the clarity of the law, as reaffirmed in countless UN resolutions, and by the International Court of Justice, by treaty bodies, special procedures, virtually every single body on earth and every state. Palestine thus remains the most important test to the credibility of the international law and the international system, especially at a time where these laws and system are more at risk than ever. This is a test the international community cannot afford to fail. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the mission of the Observer State of Palestine.